going to go off, you know, little ends of stuff.
Right?
So we're not taking out that one day.
I gotta get one here. Yeah.
So she's wanting to shut down 6 weeks of no food.
Yeah, and only liquids.
So I was holding it, and I thought, I don't like this, you know, like this.
Flat hand, yeah.
Flat hand, and it's like, oh, it's
Did you have a necklace or something maybe?
like nothing. I had absolutely nothing.
Oh my.
Cousin Joe, it's always cold. So I kind of have a fear of it.
Well, I can understand. Okay, we all about ready?
I think she would. Probably will have a meeting first.
Are we about ready?
I'm teasing. Yeah, she'd do that.
Are you guys about ready?
Oh,
I love your talk too.
thank you. I'm snazzy today.
Ready?
You can call me Commissioner Shiny.
Commissioner Shiny.
Yes. Commissioner Sparkles, maybe.
You don't have your microphones on, please turn them on. All right, let's call the March 11th, 2025 Planning and Zoning meeting of the Village of Los Ranchos de Albuquerque meeting to order. Before we get started, if you intend on speaking on any item, including comments, during the open session, would you please make sure you've signed up in the back with Michelle? Okay, seeing, hearing nobody reacting to that, I assume everybody that's going to speak has already signed in. Okay, wonderful. All right, we'll call the meeting to order with the roll call. Thank you. Thank you. Commissioner Barrow is excused tonight. They had a family emergency that she's attending to. Commissioner Martinez.
Here.
Commissioner Edward.
Here.
Commissioner Baldwin.
Here.
Commissioner Tagliapetra, or should we say Commissioner Shiny?
Sparkles tonight. I'm Sparkles. Here.
Commissioner Haywood.
Here.
And Commissioner Homan, I'm here. All right. Has everybody had an opportunity to look at the agenda? Are there any corrections or updates to the agenda? Seeing or hearing none, is there a motion?
Move to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Commissioner Martinez.
Yes.
Commissioner Edward.
Yes.
Commissioner Baldwin.
Yes.
Commissioner Tagliapetra.
Yes.
Commissioner Haywood.
Yes.
Commissioner Homan, yes. All right, we'll move on into the public comment period. Residents may address the Planning and Zoning Commission to comment on issues, problems, or successes on topics that do not appear elsewhere on the agenda. Audience members will be given the opportunity to comment on agenda items as they come up. Speakers must register with the village staff prior to the beginning of the meeting. And I have the list. Camille Varos, if you will please approach. Oops. I think they'll get a microphone over to you, Camille. And if you'll give your name and address.
Camille Vados, 427 El Paraíso Road, Los Ranchos, New Mexico, 87107 is my address. I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to comment on, but last P&Z meeting, I said that I'm open to help move things forward, but no one's approached me, and I truly am willing to help because I feel that our village is changing fast. And rather than to be in a negative mode, I'd rather be in a positive mode because over the years, and it's been many, I've had some wonderful neighbors, and I like to think that that will remain. But who's to say? Because I don't know what apartment or townhouse living represents, but I have a feeling, since I just live on the west side of the Peladron project, hopefully there's an AOA, because we're an association, I think, because I'm the secretary, and I've held over the years many offices. But I know it's time consuming, but I think the time is valuable, and dedication to our village, and whether we're in an HOA, housing, whatever that acronym represents, housing association. I just know that what we've represented, and my parents were very involved before they passed. And I'm going to get choked up because I still miss them. And I'm in a position now, I could never fill their positions because they were so dedicated, and our village was much different then than it is now. We're faced with many challenges, whether it's apartment living to meet the needs of those who don't have an opportunity to buy a house, because they're very expensive, and it's going to be that way for a while.
Thank you.
And I guess my time's up. And I'm still here to help move forward because we have to.
Thank you. So, Ms. Faros, I would suggest that you talk with our village administrator, John Avila, and he can let you know what committees or groups have been established and give you some contact information, and you can make a choice. It will be up to you to pursue that, not the village to pursue your involvement. So we're short-staffed. Yes.
I'm here to help neighbors,
Thank you.
our administrators.
Thank you, Ms. Faros. Thank you. Vincent Sanchez? Yes, please.
My name is Vincent Sanchez. I'm from 6802 Rio Grande. And some of the things I'd like to bring up kind of have to do with zoning. I don't know if you're surprised to see me a third time in a row about the same thing. I want to know how the village can be more consistent. I think that there are some needs in the village code that need to be put in. I'd like to request that a legal definition of prescriptive easement is added to the village definitions. I would also like that the New Mexico statute, which actually reminds me of the first thing, is do New Mexico statutes supersede village code, or does village code supersede New Mexico statutes?
You're in the hot seat.
Mr. Trujillo?
Madam Chair, I was about to introduce myself.
If you could pause my time as well.
Yes.
I'm sitting in for Bill tonight. There's a hierarchy to laws, and the statutes will trump local ordinances if there's any inconsistency. If there's not inconsistency, then local ordinances can define the state statute. I hope that answered your question.
I understand it pretty well. I'm not entirely sure the village does, but thank you. I request that New Mexico statute, chapter 73, special divisions, section 73, 2, 1 through 11 be added to the village code, or at least a reference to it. I also believe that I also would request that when a property owner applies for a fence that is adjacent to the right-of-way or boundary lines or lot lines, that they need to be considered more effectively. Private or MRGCD platted prescriptive easements need to be held up. The village defines this in its code, in its definitions. Any property bordering an acequia controlled by MRGCD, the property owner, any property that is bordered by MRGCD run lands needs to have MRGCDs to confirm the boundary lines and public right-of-way, meaning that in one of the situations that I'm dealing with is there's a fence that oversteps the prescriptive easement of my private and MRGCD's boundary line. Also, cited within the village code, the setback has not been enforced in construction of structures, which leads me to one of the next things that I'd like to get to, which is where in the village code does it define where fences exist within the boundary and the property lines and the structures?
Okay. Anything else?
No, I have more. It's interesting that you get 3 minutes to talk about this, but yet you can't have discussion and everybody sits mute and can't talk about it. I come here once a month to raise an issue. I'm gonna go over time. To raise an issue, and all I get to do is talk to effectively an empty room. Some people have approached me privately outside of this commission, and they have been supportive of my plight, but nothing has happened. I have received almost zero communication from the village with my problem.
If I may address,
Absolutely.
we are really not to engage in a two-way dialogue on issues that come up in public comment, mainly from the standpoint is the subject matter has not, we don't know what the subject matter is ahead of time.
Yeah.
We're not prepared from a village standpoint to address it with what the exact code may be, what the exact law pertaining to it, and it hasn't been noticed to the public that that will be a topic on the agenda. And that is what prevents us from engaging in that.
When can there be a discussion, though? It seems that public comment is great, but we don't get to have, as citizens, public comment and discussion within the community.
So that is why we bounce it back to either our village administrator or to our planning and zoning director in this case. We can make a request, and I would ask that you make a request to Mr. Avila to see about getting your topic or topics perhaps on future agendas so that it can be a formal discussion.
Mr. Avila, how many times have I contacted you for, to address my issues?
Are there,
I've done it multiple times.
Madam Chair,
yes, thank you.
pardon me for interrupting. It really isn't appropriate to engage in a back and forth with somebody for public comment.
I agree.
This is for them to make their comments, you to listen, and it's not about an exchange. It would be inappropriate to continue with this.
Thank you.
I'm going to finish with a personal statement, and then I'll be done.
Okay, I'll give you one more minute.
I have asked help for blatant violations of village code that has affected me for over a year. I've politely asked the village multiple times for support, speaking with zoning directors, mayors, zoning enforcers, and, of course, the neighbors themselves. At this point, it has been ignored, receiving little to no communication from zoning. I've watched P&Z Council deny citizens coming here, hat in hand, to ask permission for something to do on their own property. Yet conversely, what I bring up to the village, are citizens that never bothered to receive permits or apply for variances. The precedent being set is to ignore village code. There's a clear double standard that's being applied. My situation, that I am within my legal right to remove all obstructions put in my right-of-way. This will cause a point of contention between my neighbors and myself worse than it already is. This situation within the village is within the village's authority, but the village refuses to take action.
Thank you. Okay. There are no more people signed up for public comment, so we will move along on the agenda. Next is the consent agenda and the approval of the minutes for February 11th. Have all the commissioners had an opportunity to review the minutes, and are there any changes, or corrections, or additions? Seeing and hearing no response, is there a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented?
I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. We'll go through the roll call. Commissioner Martinez?
Yes.
Commissioner Edward?
Yes.
Commissioner, who do we have next? Baldwin?
Yes.
Commissioner Tagliapetra?
Yes,
And Commissioner Haywood?
Yes.
Thank you.
and you.
Oh, and Commissioner Holman, yes. Thank you. All right, so we're moving on to the public hearings and applications. Mr. Trujillo, would you go ahead and introduce yourself and thank you for your input so far?
Yeah, good evening. My name is Patrick Trujillo. I represent, well, I work for the New Mexico local government law. We're standing in for Bill tonight. He had a conflict. We have a contract to do that. I've been doing this sort of thing for about 35 years now, representing counties, municipalities, during all of that time. In fact, Brendan and I worked together 20 years ago, so we've both been at it for quite a while. And I'm here for you if you have any questions throughout the evening or if you have any questions afterwards. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So we have only one public hearing and application today. Before us, we have SDP 2501/SU0604, a request by James Griffin, agent for Rincones de los Ranchos Homeowners Association, for an amendment to an existing site development plan to adjust the existing lot line separating Track E, which is open space, and Lot 8, thereby reducing the area of Track E to approximately 6,610 square feet in area, and increasing Lot 8 to approximately 13,621 square feet in area. The subject properties are located at 300 Nuevo Hacienda Lane Northwest, legally described as Track E, Rincones de los Ranchos subdivision, containing approximately 0.2571 acres in area, and 301 Nuevo Hacienda Lane Northwest, legally described as Lot 8, Rincones de los Ranchos subdivision, containing approximately 0.207 acres in area. Both properties are zoned special use permit for PRD, Planned Residential Development, as authorized by Special Use 0604. All those wishing to be heard on this matter, both presenting and for and against, please stand to be sworn in. Mr. Trujillo, will you do the honors?
Raise your hand. Do you swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that what you're about to testify about is the truth and nothing but the truth?
Madam Chair. I presented a letter to my fellow commissioners. I need to step down. I know Jim personally. Thank you.
So you're recusing yourself from this item? Thank you. Are there any other commissioners wishing to recuse from this item? Okay. Mr. Williams, will you please give us the report?
Excuse me, Madam Chair, Commissioners, good evening. Thank you for the description of the item before you, Madam Chair. SDP 2501, as was mentioned, is a request for an amendment to approved site development plan, which would allow for a future lot line adjustment in the Rincones de los Ranchos subdivision. That request, again, is a subsequent request, would follow the subdivision ordinance and would be classified as a minor subdivision request under Village Code. But before that can occur, the approved site development plan needs to be amended. This request is part of a two-step process in accordance with the Comprehensive Zoning Code. The first step being the matter before you tonight. The Planning and Zoning Commission will make a recommendation, and then that recommendation will be forwarded on to the Board of Trustees, who have the authority under the code to make the final decision on the request. As was described by Madam Chair, this proposal affects 2 tracts of land, one at 300 Nuevo Hacienda Lane Northeast, that's Tract E, as well as 301 Nuevo Hacienda Lane Northwest, that's Lot 8. As was mentioned, there are roughly 20 individual lots that are within the subdivision. It is zoned special use permit for planned residential development. 16 of those lots are buildable lots. They are designed and set aside for future single-family dwelling units to be built on those properties. The remaining 4 lots, Tract E being one of them, are dedicated open space for the entire subdivision. As I mentioned, the proposal seeks authorization to move the existing side property line that separates these 2 lots to the south, thereby increasing the gross lot area of Lot 8 and reducing the area of Tract E. The approved site development plan designates Tract E, as I mentioned, as open space. It's currently approximately 11,199 square feet in area, and the proposal, if approved, would allow the lot to be reduced to 6,610 square feet, or a 4,889 square foot reduction to the lot. The special use permit and the plating action for the subdivision was approved in 2006. At that time, there were no specific requirements or percentages or square footage requirements for the open space. In review of the associated staff reports for that special use permit, the materials and the documents that were on file, there was no mention of what was proposed or what was shown on the approved site development plan, that it was either concerning to staff, thereby inferring that it didn't meet a policy or a specific standard in the code, nor was there any sort of exception that any comment that what was being proposed was in excess. The reports and the documents were moot on the proposed open space. Essentially, when it was reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission as well as the Board of Trustees, there was no mention, there was no request to amend or to modify the open space. For the entire subdivision, which is 5.21 acres in area, approximately 21% of that, or 1.046 acres, was dedicated as open space. This requirement, if it's approved, would reduce that open space from 21% down to 18%. Because of that, the department is recommending that the commission provide the Board of Trustees with a recommendation of approval for the proposed amendment. As I mentioned, it will go to the Board of Trustees. Provided they approve the change to the site plan, it will then have to come back through the established subdivision process. With that, Madam Chair, I'll stand for questions.
Are there any questions of Director Williams? Commissioner Martinez?
So at this point in time, other subdivisions are gonna be coming before you guys. Is there any percentages of open space versus buildable space?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Martinez, depending upon the zoning designation of the property, the short answer would be yes. However, if a proposal for a special use permit for a planned subdivision similar to this were to come through, there are, the steps within that process provide discretion to the Planning Commission and to the Board of Trustees to determine how much open space is appropriate for the development.
Thank you.
Any additional questions for Mr. Williams? Commissioner Edward, you got a question?
You're watching my body language.
I am.
So there was the, what was it called? Trial, or what was the type of the, pilot projects, and we were talking about the open space and clustering of houses, and we had a prescribed open space requirement for that. How does that open space requirement as a percentage relate to this one here?
Madam Chair, Commissioner, the difference would be, or the distinction would be, that pilot projects are allowed in specific agricultural and residential zones where the process for a special use permit, a different type of zone under the code, don't have prescriptive standards associated with dedicated open space.
And so do we have any standard open space requirement for any type of development?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Edward, yes, under the pilot program, as well as development within the commercial zones, there are landscaping requirements that are associated, percentages that are associated with those types of developments.
And do we know what those percentages are off the top of your head?
Generally speaking, I believe landscaping in commercial zones is 15% of the entire area. I don't remember what the specifics are on the pilot program. Give me 1 second, let me see if I can find it.
And do we know whether this subdivision, if there was much to do about the amount of open space to grant its initial approval?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Edward, again, based upon the materials that are in the file, the hard copies that are in the file, there was a staff report associated when the matter was both before the Planning Commission and the Board of Trustees. No reference to landscaping one way or the other was made in either of those reports. I did a brief review of the minutes and again, didn't find any reference or mention specific to landscaping.
Okay. And then the last question, do we have a before or after drawing?
Yes, sir, included in your, Madam Chair, Commissioner Edward.
If you can identify.
There's a page that lays out in landscape version, about 5 or 6 pages into the staff report.
That's the whole.
The subsequent page shows the existing lot line, it's a dashed line, and where the proposal would locate it to the south, thereby increasing the area of Lot A and reducing the area of Tract E.
Look at page 34.
For some reason, I just lost my screen.
Madam Chair, Commissioner, I apologize. I don't have the pilot program standards in my binder like I thought I did.
Well, this is parcel E, and that's parcel A, and they want to move this line south into E, but I don't see a before and after drawing. I just don't see the after drawing. All I see is a current standard as is drawing.
Mr. Trujillo will provide you the drawing that I'm referencing.
Thank you very much.
As you'll note, there's a dotted line that's shown, let me get to the page here.
Oh, yeah, sure enough.
And the note there is that the lot line would be eliminated as part of the existing lot line is there, and it would be eliminated as part of this proposal. And then if you'll move south toward the bottom of the page, it looks like it's about 58 feet or so. The new lot line, the note on that's a solid dark line says lot line created with the filing of the plat.
So is my spatial reference correct? It looks like it makes it half as big.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Edward, yes, sir. I believe it's a difference of about 4,800 square feet. So going from 11,000 to 6,600 square feet.
Okay. Will the applicant like to give us a statement? Yes, please. If you'll provide your name and address, please. I don't know why we have that easel there.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is James Griffin. I'm a resident of Los Rincos subdivision. I have a house at 309 Los Rincos. This lot I also own next to the one that I've built. I read the the agenda and all the legal descriptions. I've heard these numbers. I'm not an expert on that, but I did, if I may show you an
Certainly.
exhibit. I'll just hold it up, if that's okay. I'm not sure where the 4,000.
If you can still, we need to capture your voice on the record. So grab
I'm not
the-
sure where the 4,000 square feet, but this is the lot in question in green. The purple is the landscaped HOA tract. For as many years as I've lived there and all of the residents, and there are 12 lots in the community, this piece was always assumed to be owned by this lot. It wasn't landscaped. It was maintained by myself. When I started the process to look at building a house on this lot, I went to the HOA and said, okay, here's my concept, here's some of the plans. Had a surveyor come out and survey it and found out that, in fact, this little red piece is what we're talking about. Which never, and I have pictures of the actual landscaping and what's not landscaped, if I could present to you. This is not 4,000 square feet. It's just this little piece. It's moving this lot line 20 feet this way is all we're doing. I could show you pictures of the existing landscaping and what this piece looks like now. But when I spoke with the HOA, the option was, okay, they can go and landscape this, pay to maintain it, or maybe we just move the lot line. And the agreement with the HOA, and there are members of the, appreciate members of the subdivision coming tonight in support of this. It's a small subdivision, it's 12 lots. We don't have a professional homeowners association, tried to keep the cost down as much as possible. So I agreed to pay for all the surveying and the process to get to this point. I did not know what that process would be, but it's turned out to be pretty extensive to even get to this point. But that's all we're talking about is this unlandscaped piece, moving it 20 feet this way. That's it. And that's on the survey that was provided with the application.
Mr. Williams, is that consistent with your understanding of the materials that we've received?
Madam Chair, yes. However, I think it's important to note that the cul-de-sac that's shown, as well as all of the interior roads for the subdivision, are private ways. So they count toward the size and the area of the lot. So while I agree with Mr. Griffin's representation of the red portion or the tiny portion being colored red, I think it's also important for the commission to remember that the road, which is sometimes not included if we've got a piece of property that isn't accessed by private roads. Public roads are not counted toward lot area, but in this scenario, because of the existing site development plan and the layout, that area, which doesn't look like it's part of the property, actually counts toward the overall gross area of the lot.
Thank you for that clarification. Are there any questions from the commissioners to the applicant? Commissioner Baldwin.
Thank you. And thank you for bringing that visual, because it really does help. The materials in the packet are accurate and also create a different impression of a much larger space that you are moving into, that 50%, nearly 50% reduction of open space. And as you can appreciate, open space is a very dear issue to the village and to residents throughout the village. And open space within homeowners associations is part of that blend, that commitment that we have to open space. So even though there is not a specific metric of you must have this much or this little, it gives pause. This helps greatly. I was also sort of curious about, well, doesn't the HOA do landscaping, or why was it left, unclaimed? And again, you've presented some information that's very helpful, that the HOA does do landscaping. I am curious, though, why that little bit was in no man's land. why that wasn't attached to the bit that the HOA was landscaping. Do you know?
The members of the community have talked about it. Nobody has an answer to that. We just don't. They'd been there, we just assumed that it was part of the lot. I mean, some of the members here can speak to that, but I don't think any of us realized. I have the pictures of the landscaping, it's beautiful. It's like fence, trees, and bushes, but it stops.
Yeah.
I mean, why would, maybe the surveyor messed up when they were doing it initially, but it just stops. It's clear that somebody thought that's where the HOA track ended, when the landscape was done.
Thank you. Can I ask a question of the attorney? Attorney Trujillo, are there any requirements in village code for consideration in moving a lot line?
I was just asking Mr. Williams that. In a lot of jurisdictions, there are. In this instance, I don't think, in my review of the report, is not. If you notice that Mr. Williams' analysis says that the change in lot size is de minimis. First of all, I'm very proud of him for using that word. It's not used very often. It's small in comparison to the rest of the lot. So when you're talking about a special use permit tied to a site plan, it's basically salesmanship of the whole thing. Through a special use permit, you're granted certain exceptions to general rules based on the site plan. What Mr. Williams did, given that there isn't a whole lot of direction, is he made the determination that you will make as well, if you agree with him, that the change in the site plan doesn't change the overall scheme. It's de minimis, it's small. And unfortunately, I think that's what you have to work with your ordinance as written.
So just to make sure I'm clear, there is no requirement that there be any transaction and any consideration?
No.
Financial consideration in
Nothing in
doing
your
a transaction of a lot line? Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant?
So if I understand this correctly, there's a dispute as to who does the landscaping, and there is no landscaping in that area, and that's why you're doing this?
I'm not sure there's a dispute. To my knowledge, we're not had a dispute on it, is what do we do with it? But there's not been a dispute, to my knowledge, between the community and myself.
They just don't take care of it.
May I show you a picture?
Sure, I was gonna ask, I'm trying to look at an aerial photography here, and there's a vacant lot there, so I can't really.
Can that be put into the record or something?
Yeah.
So is the entire lot vacant right now? So I guess the question is your building plan requiring a bigger lot in order to meet an FAR?
We haven't submitted any building plans, so I don't think, I'm not familiar, but I don't believe so. I can't build on that piece. It's like there's no piece of the house that's going on there. It's like a pie, slice of pie.
So it's almost as though this action would help somebody take responsibility for maintaining that particular slice. Is that?
Yes, I mean, I'm grateful that was I'm not kidding, I'm grateful that was the decision of the HOA. And part of it was I would pay to go through this process and take care of it. But I'm definitely grateful for the community to get us to this point.
Madam Chair, if I may, I apologize. I think after speaking with the surveyor that's been working on this proposal, reading the materials supplied by Mr. Griffin, I think, Commissioner Edward, this is simply a situation to align the property line with where the landscaping currently stops to formally correct and memorialize where the lot line is in order to add this area, this no man's land, if you will, colored in red, on his drawing, to incorporate that through the formal process into Lot 8. There's no
I understand, I get that.
argument or anything of that nature. It's simply to formally correct what everyone assumed for years.
What my concern is that how many future developments are going to create a bunch of no man's lands, and we're going to have open space that is created and designated on approval of a subdivision, and people are going to come in and do a land grab and eat away at open space that we have approved as a part of an overall plan.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Edward, have not been with the village, about 18 months, but I am not aware of this ever coming up prior to this particular request.
It is a clever idea, though.
Mr. Griffin, can we add this to
Absolutely.
the record? Thank you. All right. Any additional questions? Can we go on to the audience that's here?
Madam Chair, one indulgence, if you don't mind. The visual aid that he handed,
Yes.
that he had up there, if we could have that for the record?
Absolutely.
That would be wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Griffin. Mr. Trujillo, thank you for that addition. All right, so at this time, we will hear from folks that are here in support of the application. Tracy Hunter, if you will provide your name and address, please. Yeah, that's an obstacle. So,
Good evening. I'm Tracy Hunter. I'm halfway down the subdivision.
could you give us your address, please?
It's 320 Nuevo Hacienda Lane. And I'm just here in support of the acquisition of Mr. Griffin.
Thank you. Lori Du Bois? Your name and address, please.
Lori Dubois, 332 Nuevo Hacienda Lane. I am a neighbor of Jim, and I am in total support of him acquiring the property.
Thank you. Vera Gonzalez? Name and address, please.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, thank you for allowing me to speak. Elvira Gonzalez, 335 Nuevo Hacienda Lane. And I'm here to support Mr. Griffin's request for a lot adjustment. He currently owns a home in our development that is beautifully maintained and landscaped, and I'm really anxious to see what he does with this new space that he's going to hopefully acquire. Thank you.
Camille Morris? Oh, somebody grab a. Michelle will get it for you. Thank you.
Camille Varos, 427 El Paraíso Road, Los Ranchos, New Mexico, 87107. And there is no definitive anything when it comes to this application that either I'm hearing or hearing. Mr. Trujillo and Mr. Wilson are here filling positions. And for our consultant, I don't think they can make any decisions. And I would hope that the planning and zoning commissioners can't move this over without, they don't even have an established HOA from what I heard from Mr. Griffin, if I'm saying his name right. Whether it's 1 acre or 1 foot, it's still land. And our village, as I see it, he's getting land for free, even though he could, and those supporting it that are here from neighbors, you know, I don't want this to be set as a precedent, that whatever is decided upon moves forward without definitive direction. And I don't know that I'm saying this clearly or not, but I'm not in support of it, because moving forward, there is no established HOA. And so how could those who are here speak for that situation? Establish an HOA. There's a neighborhood association for years in my neighborhood. So I really feel to save money is not there has to be an established HOA or an association for it to be
The
recognized.
speaker's time has expired.
Thank you.
Ms. Faros. According to the information, Mr. Williams, can you verify, according to our packet, we actually have a letter from the HOA president for this area. Is that correct?
Test. Madam Chair, Commissioners, that's correct.
Thank you. So,
Just adding on.
I'm sorry, your time is up. Thank you. All right.
Is that wrong
Yes, there is an HOA.
for this particular?
Ms. Faros? Ms. Faros, we've heard your input. I'm sorry. So now, Mr. Trujillo and Mr. Williams, please confirm, as a commission, we are here to support and uphold the code and ordinances of the village, and we do not have power over an HOA. The HOA issues are outside of our purview, correct?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, yes, in short, that's correct. The matter that's before consideration by the commission tonight is whether or not the site plan can be amended. The role of this body is to make a recommendation. A final determination would be made by the Board of Trustees.
Thank you. Commissioner Baldwin?
Point of clarification, anything coming before, as something coming before the commission, the moving up of the lot line, are conditions allowed?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Baldwin, based on the lack of specificity the code currently has as it relates to an amendment, approving or considering an amendment, there is some latitude that's afforded the commission to condition or place conditions if the commission were to deem that necessary.
Can I ask the applicant a question?
If you will approach. Thank you, Mr. Griffin. Commissioner Baldwin and perhaps some of the other commissioners may have questions for you.
Thank you. So the 20 feet that would become a part of your property, would you have comfort level in placing a restriction on that area not being landscaped as opposed to developed as a part of a larger residence? In other words, you are, my understanding is your intent is to take this no man's land and landscape it. So it will be an attractive part, not only of your property, not only so you don't have to be, have your neighbors think that is your property anyway, and it's not being landscaped. So it gives you that ability to do that. Would you be amenable to fundamentally putting a restriction on it to keep it as a landscaped area, not as something that when you do develop the house, builds into that area? Or is that not something you're comfortable with?
And if I misinterpret your question, please.
Please speak into the microphone.
If the question is, will the house extend into, the actual structure of the house extend into that space? The answer to that would be no, because by definition, the lot has setbacks that are already established by the village on how close you can build to your property corners. So
Correct.
the structure would not extend into.
If the lot line is being moved 20 feet, then ostensibly those setbacks would also be moving because it's a part of your new combined property. And then ostensibly, if it's a 15-foot side setback, I don't know if it's considered side or back, then it would potentially give latitude for 5 feet. I guess part of this is getting a better understanding of what the intent of the line move is. My understanding from the packet is that the intent of the line move is so that you can, and generously take responsibility for a pile of dirt and have it landscaped, because the HOA improved landscaping around that rest of that circle didn't incorporate that, and that's what you would do. That's a very different proposition than moving the lot line in order to have a much larger home that builds into that area that you will be acquiring. And so I'm just trying to get clarity about whether you're comfortable sort of putting letters to my understanding of the intent and keeping that 20-foot area as a landscaped area that certainly will improve and benefit your total property, but not be a part of the structure.
I'm comfortable that it would not be, the structure would not be built into that space, yes. To say that I'm comfortable into perpetuity, having space that I'm maintaining that has restrictions, makes it very difficult for, if I potentially might want to sell the house. I mean, to have restrictions within your own lot sometimes gets complicated.
Yes.
Understood.
Yeah,
Just wanted to ask you the question.
thank you.
Commissioner Edwards, you're biting at the bit. I understand.
Oh, I was just, I don't think, well, so I'm looking at the aerial photography and I'm looking at the plans. This area that was considered open space is part of the road that Mr. Williams was referring to. And within that cul-de-sac, it shows for a very large area that's to be landscaped in the cul-de-sac, which it's not. So the plans are not true as to how they are built, the best I can tell. Or is that your plan saying you're going to be putting in that landscape median in the cul-de-sac, which it shows in all the plans?
Who are you addressing the question?
I'm asking you and I'm asking Mr. Brennan.
And I apologize to Mr. Brennan. I
Mr. Brennan, do you
forgot
want-
that the road is, I mean, it looks like we have a big lot, but really some of our lot is, we're not building in the road.
Mr. Williams, do you have something?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Edward, I'm sorry, would you ask the question again, please, sir?
So I was just kind of repeating, I think what I heard you say earlier, that the road itself is considered part of the open space? Or considering the part of any lot out there in its lot calculation?
The entire lot is Tract E, which includes a portion of the cul-de-sac.
Okay. And to the degree that the plans for the subdivision show that the cul-de-sac is supposed to have a really large landscaped area for which there is no landscaping in the middle of the cul-de-sac, the aerial photography does not show that that was pursued or completed. Or is the landscaped cul-de-sac in the center of the cul-de-sac your plan to do?
No, the center of the cul-de-sac is not what we're discussing. That is landscaped.
Well, the aerial photography says that there's no landscaping there.
If I may,
Which for,
In the middle of the road, in the middle of the.
Yeah, in the middle of the cul-de-sac, it's supposed to be, there's like an island there.
No, it's not. Mhm, it's roadway.
I know, but if you take a look at the plans, if you guys would just look at your landscaping plan, it actually shows that that is to be done, and it's even surveyed out.
Well, that would be probably another issue.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, Mr.
Madam Chair,
Williams.
Commissioner Edward, really separate issues. The proposal tonight is specific to, limited to adjusting the lot line and whether or not the commission would allow that or make a recommendation on that. Any perceived non-compliance with the approved site development plan would be an enforcement action, which would be separate from the conversation tonight.
Thank you.
I think I bring it up to the extent that Commissioner Baldwin brought up, would you put a condition on not building within this new area? And to the degree that not all the open space has been developed as proposed in the original plans that the village approved, I think it adds emphasis to what Commissioner Baldwin would like to pursue as putting conditions, because clearly the open space isn't as it is or seems for this development, because the neighborhood was not developed as the plans specify.
Commissioner Baldwin?
Point of order. I was asking a question about it. I'm not committing to making a motion or requiring that necessarily. I just wanted to understand the applicant's commitment to improving this landscaping and that it wasn't his direct intent to build into it. So it's still, I just wanted to make it clear, I'm not, I didn't ask the question with the intent of committing to a condition.
All right. Are we through with questions for the applicant? All right, thank you. With that, is there a motion? And if I may remind, it's not for approval, it's for recommendation.
Yes.
Thank you.
I make a motion for recommendation for approval of SDP-25-01, parentheses, SU-06-04, parentheses.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay. Commissioners, discussion?
With my survey background, basically what's happening here is just a property line adjustment and not going any further than necessary with landscaping, et cetera, because once a line lot adjustment is taken into consideration and surveyed and got into the county, then it becomes his property, and what he does with it, it's his property to do what he wants to. In what I'm hearing over here, it's a very simple line adjustment, and that's pretty the emphasis of where we're going. And I think we're, I'd love to bring up more discussion, but I think what we really just need to look at is all this is a lot line adjustment. And with that being, and with him going through the surveyor and with him going through the county, basically all they're doing is adjusting that lot line. And carrying it any further than that, I think, is his prerogative to do once it becomes his property, his ability. That's my comment to discussion.
Any further?
I'm looking at this from the viewpoint of what are the values, visions, and missions of the village in terms of open space and agricultural and landscape setting. And to the degree that the plan has not been pursued, fulfilled, or continued, and an area that is supposed to be open space will be developed with hardscape or a building, I think kind of defies those things. The plans that people might have been excited about on paper haven't come through in two forms. One, inside the cul-de-sac for the large landscaped median has not been completed, and then this area itself might be turned into more hardscape is kind of the viewpoint that I'm taking. And just turn this into a bigger property with larger percentages and more acreage, and it'll happen again. And so I think that we need to consider that, and we need to send that message to the Board of Trustees that, I mean, this gentleman came in here earlier today saying there is no code enforcement. Nobody comes out and does anything. People do it under the board. I think that the applicant is great in coming in here and trying to do it the right way, and I compliment you for doing that. But I think that if we're going to allow this, then we need to make these people hold true to what their landscaping and open space areas would be. And I guess in two accounts, the subdivision and the HOA hasn't fulfilled that, either on the land that he would like to have and take care of, and that of the large landscaped cul-de-sac. And so we're pretty hard on people when they come in here for a 100 square foot storage shed. Those are the two lenses that I'm looking through. I think it's great that he wants to do something nice and he sees an opportunity, he's seizing it, and maybe taking the fly out of the water for the neighborhood. But the neighborhood and the subdivision have not pursued and done the things that these plans say that they will do.
Commissioner Haywood, before you ask, let me ask Mr. Williams a question. Is the development still in line with the open space requirements per our zoning?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, when this matter was considered, there was not and there is not a specific standard as it relates to special use permits for planned residential development and any dedicated open space that might be proposed as part of that overall project.
So the answer is yes, it's still within. Thank you. Commissioner Haywood?
Actually my comment follows on that. It looks like the only precedent we have is commercial, which Mr. Williams said was averaged out at about 15%. And I'd like to point out that this has gone from 21 to 18%, so it still exceeds what the village generally requires in terms of open space. We can't use the ordinance that we approved in lieu of the pilot project because that is formula-based per development. So this you cannot even use, even though in theory we could come up with that formula, you can't apply it to this. So I would just like to point out that we are still generally exceeding an open space requirement that the village has. And this subdivision obviously had an excessive one, and it's now still going down to a larger one.
Thank you. Commissioner Baldwin.
Thank you. I appreciate the comments by my fellow commissioners. I would agree with Commissioner Haywood that there is not a specific requirement, and that the conservation district which passed was for those who are opting in to a particular set aside. It's not for every subdivision. In fact, that was a distinct part of the conversation in its approval. I do think that this is one of these sort of, it's both clear and it's both a little odd and uncomfortable, because you're talking about a homeowners association and what they are allowed and required and obligated to do, and with each other, right? I mean, you definitely are all there in the neighborhood, and you have to work with each other. And so my questions were about trying to understand what the commitment was within the neighborhood and to the neighborhood. I feel pretty comfortable that the applicant's intent is to landscape it and not to build inside of it. And if that were to change, I'd expect there'd be some pretty significant conversations around the table. Our job as P&Z is simply the consideration of the line change. And so given that, and given the additional information, I really do appreciate the helpful additional pieces of information and context about that move. I'm comfortable moving forward. I do think it is an issue that we are going to continue to grapple with in terms of open space and how that presents itself around this village. And that everything contributes to that and everything needs to be understood in its context. So with that, I don't intend to make any kind of amendment to a motion for a specific requirement or, lean in terms of recommending this for approval to the board. But I do think it raises some awkwardnesses and challenges about how HOA requirements and the code of the village operate with each other.
Great. Are we ready for a vote? All right, it's a roll call vote. It's been moved that we provide the Board of Directors, the Board of Trustees with our recommendation for approval. And it's been moved and seconded. We've gone through our discussion and we will go through the roll call vote. Commissioner Martinez?
Yes.
Commissioner Edward?
Yes.
Commissioner Baldwin?
Yes.
Commissioner Haywood?
Yes.
Commissioner Tagliapetra has recused herself. Commissioner Homan, yes. So this has been approved. We will close the hearing for SDP 25-01, SU 0604, a request by James Griffin, agent for Rincones de los Ranchos Homeowners Association, for an amendment to the existing site development plan to adjust the existing lot lines for Track E and Lot 8. Thank you. We'll call that hearing closed. Next item on our agenda. Thank you all for coming. I see some of you getting up that were here to support that hearing. Thank you for coming. So the next item on our agenda would be old business, which we have none. So we will move on to new business. And if I can get to the right page. Here we go. Okay, first item on our
Oh, sorry, man.
first item of business, and Mr. Williams, if I am supposed to have a specific script for this piece, please jump in. This is the election of officers for the commission, the Planning and Zoning Commission of Los Ranchos, for the 2005 election. This is required on an annual basis. And Mr. Williams, do you have anything to add to that other than we go through?
Madam Chair, no, ma'am, and I apologize for a lack of specific directions. As you mentioned, March of every year, this commission nominates officers for the next 12 months. Tonight, Madam Chair, you will be asking for nominations for chair, vice chair, and secretary. Those respective roles are outlined within section 9.2.2 of the Comprehensive Zoning Code. And I do believe, I don't want to speak for you all, but I think you're familiar with the roles and responsibilities of those positions.
Thank you. So first up will be a nomination for the Planning and Zoning Chair.
Madam Chair, I would like to nominate Mary Holman as chair for this next year.
Is there a second?
I second.
Is there discussion?
I don't know her very well.
Keep it up.
I think she did a good job.
Okay, this is a roll call vote. Commissioner Martinez?
Yes.
Commissioner Edward?
Yes.
Commissioner Baldwin?
Yes.
Commissioner Tagliapetra?
Yes.
Commissioner Haywood?
Yes.
Thank you. And once again, reflect that Commissioner Barrow is excused and Commissioner Homan, yes. Next up, we need a nomination for vice chair. I would move approval or a recommendation that we adopt Connie Barrow for the vice chair once again.
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
Does she have to be present to?
No.
Okay.
You know, it's one of those things.
That's a
you can
raffle.
decide.
You don't have to be present to win.
She can take out the trash.
Is there discussion? Okay. Roll call vote once again. Commissioner Martinez?
Yes.
Commissioner Edward?
Yes.
Commissioner Ball?
Yes.
Commissioner Tagliapetra?
Yes.
Commissioner Haywood?
Yes.
Commissioner Homan, yes. All right. Next is nomination for secretary. Is there a motion?
I'd
Or a
like,
nomination, I should say.
I would like to renominate Gwen Baldwin.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion?
You guys are in cahoots, aren't
All right. Commissioner Martinez? How
Yes.
do you say? Commissioner Edward?
you? Yes.
Commissioner Baldwin?
Yes.
Commissioner Tagliapetra?
Yes.
Commissioner Haywood?
Yes.
Commissioner Homan? Yes. All right, so it looks like our new officers, myself, Mary Homan for chair, Connie Barrow for vice chair, and Gwen Baldwin for secretary. Thank you for all your support. Okay.
Thank you.
Department updates.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, thank you. Just wanted to reference, there was an item talked about last month about an article, or more specifically, outreach made to members of the village, residents of the village, individuals interested in development in the village, kind of clarifying what particular projects would and conversely would not require a permit. A previous article was published several months ago in the Village Vision magazine. That article has been updated, but long story short, there are any number of ways that individuals that are uncertain as to whether or not a permit is required, or in certain cases, a permit may not be required, but some sort of village process is associated with their particular request. The best way to do that is to contact the village directly. The easiest way, or the most appreciated way, I'll say, is not to make a phone call, but to email us, pnz@losranchosnm.gov. We try very hard to respond to those in a timely manner, but it really helps protect a particular property owner or a developer if they've got something in writing from the village that shows, again, answers their question and guides them as to what they need to do, or gives a general explanation on the associated processes and procedures that would be necessary to put in a swimming pool, or to put a tough shed in your backyard, or to, I don't know, build a chicken coop, or whatever the proposal may be. Secondly, the village standards, the regulations, are all listed on the village website. They can go to the planning and zoning page. I believe toward the bottom, there's a link to village codes or village ordinances. I can't remember what the specific language is. And then it's very easy to go, to follow that link, to use the search bar to search for specific terms in order to get a general understanding of the regulations. And then lastly, we make ourselves, as much as we can, available to meet with the public if there are still remaining questions about a specific process. I will remind you that with the exception of Ms. Austin at the back of the room, she holds the stakes down on the fort. So we ask that people be patient with us and do a little bit of due diligence before simply just coming into the village, because as you can imagine, she's pretty busy trying to keep up with the existing workload and take care of the responsibilities that are assigned to her. So in a nutshell, we'll have that article at some future, or republished in some future edition of the Village Vision. But again, would like to remind folks that there are any number of ways to have their questions answered if they'll do a little bit of research on their end before approaching the village with a specific idea.
So if I may ask, you've mentioned Village Vision several times. What is the status of the Village Vision? Are we still, I've heard several folks saying, gosh, I haven't seen one in a while. So did they just miss a mailing, or are we having issue with publication or drafting? You just got one? Okay.
Yeah, within the last month.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I believe I think we've got a box out by the front, but it's within the last 2 to 3 weeks. I think the most recent edition was published and available for public consumption.
Thank you.
I got mine last week, I think.
Last week, okay.
Mid last week is when I got mine. But I don't know if they come out alphabetical or not.
Can I make a comment about the village code? I don't think it's easy, and I'm just trying to scroll through here just quickly. I think the village code is buried. I think the village code should be a big yellow golden box says village code. I'm on here and I go to departments, I go to planning and zoning. And, where do you go from there? You go to planning and zoning meetings, you go to forms and permits, and there's nothing on there that says village code. And so I would just think that it would be helpful to, I've looked at it before. I've called Michelle, and I've come in here before to have stuff printed. I just couldn't find it. I think that there needs to be a larger way to see the village code, because we don't have a code enforcement officer. And people are breaking the rules all the time. It could just be out of pure ignorance, and they say, well, I don't see a village code, so I'm not going to do it.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Edward, I believe I mentioned it last month and maybe the month before. If you or any member of the community is concerned about a particular project, and specifically them not having a permit, all anybody needs to do is provide us with a street address. We work cooperatively with Bernalillo County, who is assisting us. I'm aware of a project that they just red tagged 2 weeks ago because there was no permit. And to your point, we don't have a code enforcement officer, and I know that efforts are actively being made to get somebody in here. It performs an essential function for the department. But if there are concerns, it's best to bring them to our attention. We will get back with complainants, or sometimes people just wish to make a complaint anonymously. But we will, if we've got an address, we can go out and do a little bit of research, but we can go out and take a look and ensure that if there's a problem, it stops, and then we work to educate a property owner on the steps that are necessary.
But just having easier access, that there's a code so that there's less ignorance on their part. I'd like to give the person the benefit of the doubt that really goes and looks for the code, that it is super easy to find, and it's on multiple pages. And then it's on multiple pages of the website. It should not be a hunt and peck sort of a thing and scroll, because people just say, if they're not experienced at it, they're just gonna say, I guess there might not be one.
And I think we can all agree that there certainly be some improvements. Mr. Avila, do you have your report for us? Anything? What's the status on the 4 open positions?
Commissioners, we do have postings for positions. We do have some applicants. Other than that, I'm not really going to comment. We do have some applicants that we'll be able to interview relatively soon.
All right. Well, with that, let's go on to commissioners' discussion. Mr. Martinez, would you like to start us off?
I would. I think that what we're seeing tonight by this gentleman over here and by discussions, I think that there has always been, in the time that we've become a group from the beginning, that there is the ability for us to be able to help guide and direct changes that we can feel. And I think that we just need to continue on that. It's a journey, like everything else is. It's something that's not going to happen overnight, but we hear and we strive to. So I think that what we need to do is just keep on that same journey. We are talking about, starting a committee that would maybe help in this situation. It's up to the people of the village to come in and say, I would like to have the village say, you're more than welcome to start the process in something that we're doing right now, and basically bring it up so that we can bring it to the village. Making comments and allowing the comments just to continue to just be comments has to change from, let's get some action and let's put some action into it, and we're striving to it, and I appreciate that there is a lot that's necessary, but it's how do you eat an elephant? How do we change the zones? Just one bit at a time, and that's my comment.
Thank you. Mr. Edward.
1 second. I feel for this guy out here. I don't know what the process is to get stuff on the agenda. We need to be more thoughtful. I don't know. I don't know if it's Brennan's job to do it because he's a temporary guy and he's trying to do the best he can under stressful circumstances with a limited staff. But somehow, I don't know the policy side of things, but these things need to somehow get discussed and worked on. One of the things I'd like to do is, sometimes we always complain about things. I'd like to have a forum by which we can honor people who are doing things well. And you usually don't hear about that in the planning and zoning. I think we should honor and recognize people who have done good projects, and not just the ones that are brand new that look nice, but the ones that are maybe 50 or 100 years old and people maintain them and make them nice. You know, New Mexico is the land of the lowest watermark on the tank as to how well we take care of our stuff. And it makes us poor. And I like to have an enriched community and honor those people who are doing a nice job, whether it be a particular home on a street or a business or something like that, when they've made an upgrade or an improvement or they're doing a good job. I think we need to have some way to acknowledge that. It might sound aspirational, but you know what?
It's a nice idea. Commissioner Baldwin.
I appreciate the conversation and the discussion that we have. It is really, I very much appreciate the reappointment election as secretary, and I intend to continue to do what I can to support the village in its work. Part of that is supporting the staff in a very difficult undertaking with a very large set of vacancies that I know they would probably be first in line to say we would love to have these filled. And so while continuing to raise the issues that are important to raise, and we need to do that, I am mindful that I need to increase my patience because without the staff in place, doing study work groups, which I would love to get back into, taking on sections of the code that we know have inconsistencies and challenges, all that is real and it is still going to be there for us. And I'm hoping that the wait will not be long, but know that I trust the staff to get the new hires that are necessary. I appreciate the multiple hats, Administrator Avila, that you are wearing right now, and the extra work that Brennan is having to do. And I very much appreciate Attorney Trujillo coming and being a part of this. It's, we all are responsible for our piece of this, and I just appreciate everyone contributing and being a part of this. We've got a lot of work ahead of us.
Commissioner Tagliapetra.
My turn. I do like what John said about recognizing someone who's done exceptional, but I don't know how we could do it maybe in the magazine. I too want to get back to our sessions to work on code. I think that's huge, but I understand the village needs more people too. So I'm gonna go back to my sticky point that I always fuss about, Vara Winery, and their stuff keeps on getting higher and bigger out front. And all of that stuff out front is supposed to be shielded, guys. And then we have a bed and breakfast on 4th Street. Did anybody know about that one?
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
We have a bed and breakfast on 4th Street now.
Where?
It's between the bakery and Z-Coil.
Oh, it's been there a long time.
It's been there a long time? Okay, I only saw it the other day, maybe a new sign or something.
They're on Airbnb.
Yeah, the B&B, yeah. Okay, Vara, can we please do something with Vara, please? Thank you.
I guess the question, did they get approval?
I don't know if they got approval. I just saw the sign the other day. Maybe they put up a brand new sign that made me notice it or something, but it's there.
Commissioner Haywood? Thank you. Okay. I want to just thank you all for supporting my continued presence in this position. And I enjoy working with each and every one of you and totally respect the struggles that staff is having on such a short staffing at this point in time. We do, however, really need to be able to address issues that come before us, and quite frankly, it's embarrassing when it's repeatedly brought before us and we can't do anything about it. There's got to be some kind of a vetting that can be done, some kind of arbitration. Perhaps the village can help with, whether it's with our attorney, or even our judge, to help with some mediation toward issues that apparently aren't being settled. I know it has occurred in the past, and I would ask you, Mr. Avila, if you can please consider that and have Mr. Sanchez come and speak with you, see what we can do. We've got to have some kind of resolution on these issues. We can't just continue in this manner. So with that, I also would like to acknowledge that we've received a training notice. I think it was, what, April 1st and 3rd, or 1st and 4th? 1st and 3rd. 1st and 3rd. Please take advantage of that. I'm hoping they've got an alternate date for me because I will be out of the country.
Where are you going to be?
That date, I will be in, I think I'm still in Sicily.
Sounds like fun. Have a pizza for me.
I'm going to say I don't go to Greece until next month, so yeah, later in the month, so. Anyhow, Mr. Edwards.
So what do we do, Brennan, to help you guys out? And Michelle, I mean, you guys are under the gun.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Edward, I mean, at this point, I would just say, continue to do what you're doing. Appreciate the patience. And again, if there are complaints, questions, to route those to myself or to Michelle. The PNZ at Los Ranchos NM, you know, is tracked, and so that helps us keep a tally and provides us a vehicle to get back to folks to answer their question, to address their issue, whatever it might be.
Okay.
Mr. Williams, you said PNZ. Is that an ampersand or is it the word and?
And, A-N-D, P-A-N-D-Z at losranchosnm.gov.
Okay, with that, I think we are calling the meeting adjourned, and the time looks like it is 7:28. Thank you all for coming.
Congratulations, Ms. Secretary.
Very well done.